Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service.
Hello there, and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're all about the positivity, positive vibes here on the show. And I've got a very special guest with me here this week. He is one half of the legendary tag team, the Killer Bees. He is part of the Cauliflower Alley Club, and we'll get talking about a lot of that stuff here throughout the podcast. Pleased to welcome the one and only Brian Blair. Brian, welcome to Wrestling with Heart.
Well, thank you, Stanley, and I love the name. I love the name of your podcast, Wrestling with Heart, because it takes more people with heart to make this world a better place, and we should all strive to make the world a better place when we leave here than when we arrived here.
I agree with that.
Appreciate you.
Of course, wholeheartedly. It's a pleasure. So let's talk about your childhood and upbringing. I see you're from Gary, Indiana. What was your upbringing like?
Well, I was one of only a few white people on my block on Arizona Street in Gary. And so I was raised as a minority, and, we never had prejudice. Most of my friends were Black and a few Hispanic friends. And we got along great. And, it's amazing how the world changes, which is, in my opinion, that's what the government is trying to do, is trying to divide us. But fortunately, there's a lot of intelligent people that realize that.
Yeah, I think if we all come together as one and be united, that whole sense of unity, I feel like, is very important. So seems like you grew up with all different kinds of people, diversity. And that's very important in today's day and age, is recognizing, people that may look different than you, but we're all the same in many different ways.
No, absolutely. I don't have a prejudice bone in my body against anybody. I have friends that are gay, friends of, every ethnicity, religion, every background. And, I appreciate them all. As long as, you can, Martin Luther King once said, you judge the person by the content of his character. And I not that I judge, but these are people with good character are the kind of people that I like to be around, and I thrive being around. And I don't mind being around somebody that has open ears, and they may be a little negative or down, or think the world is completely against them and have a chip on their shoulder if they'll open their ears up a little bit. And because I've always learned to be a good listener, a little older now, so I try to pass on a little wisdom if I can. And it's a good thing when you can do that.
Absolutely. Making a difference is very important. That's kind of what we try to do here on the podcast. Especially in the world of professional wrestling, you see people from every walk of life you can imagine, and how it's grown, and just so many people of different backgrounds today. It's amazing. How did your career get started? What got you into wrestling?
Well, I was going to say, that's one thing about athletics, Stanley, is when you're an athlete, you're automatically thrown into a diverse crowd. And so being an athlete all my life, since I was a little kid, I played sports, baseball, when I was 6 years old, and all just about every sport, other than hockey and, the non-traditional, hockey's a mainstream sport now, but, when I was growing up in the 70s, and it's a whole different world now. But one thing's for sure is, in athletics, you're diverse. So, and your question again was
Yeah, all people from professional wrestling today, they come from all walks of life, and we talk about diversity, different religions, backgrounds. It's just amazing to see how universal pro wrestling has gotten in
Mhm.
the last 15, 20, 30 years. How did you get interested in wrestling? Was it something you watched as a kid growing up and you just went, I want to do this?
Well, it's kind of like this. Back in Gary, Indiana, when I was, oh golly, maybe like 8, 9 years old, I went to Big People's Church for the first time. We have a Lutheran church not far from our house that our parents took us to, and I got to go to from the kids' side to listen to the actual adult sermon, and the sermon that day happened to be on the power of prayer. And the preacher was very, very powerful because he convinced me that if you pray earnestly and you're a good person, that God's going to answer your prayer. And it might not be today, might not be tomorrow, might not be next week or next year, but he will eventually answer your prayer. So I went home as a young kid thinking, wow, this is amazing. What do I pray for? So I started thinking, well, what if I got $1 million? Because we were poor. We didn't have, I shouldn't say we were totally poor because we didn't miss meals. Maybe it was spam and eggs or inexpensive things, but my parents always worked hard to feed us. And so I said, I'll pray for $1 million. And I thought, well, I'm just a kid, they're going to take that money away from me. And then I had these model cars I used to build, and I looked up on my wall and I saw this blue Corvette, and I had a red Corvette, and I'm going to pray for a Corvette, and that'd be great. And I thought, well, I don't have a driver's license, I can't drive. What good's a Corvette going to do just sitting in the driveway? And I kept thinking and thinking and thinking, and I said, well, Superman had to be a little kid at some point. I said, I'm going to pray to be Superman. And so I kept praying. I kept praying to be Superman. I mean, for like a year, I was praying to be Superman. I was jumping off my bed, wrapping a sheet around, hitting my head into, getting
Hmm.
head banged. And I just wasn't becoming Superman. And I shared this story, this prayer with a friend of mine, Billy Kempinski. I remember we were, he was one of the only white kids on the block that lived at the very end of Arizona Street. And there's snow on the ground, ice, and I'll never forget. He had this like little boom box, and he was playing. The song was on My Green Tambourine,
Love
and
that song.
that's how long ago this was. And I said, Billy, I'm just praying to be Superman. Someday I'm going to be Superman. And he laughed at me and he said, oh man, Superman's a fictitious character. That's a costume he wears, and he can't really, you know, leap tall buildings and all that stuff. He said, you'll never be Superman. Well, I beg to differ with Billy right now because I was able to live on television. Maybe I didn't have a cape and a blue and red costume with a big S on it, but I had black and yellow tights, and I was able to hit the ropes like a speeding bullet and leapfrog a man with a single bound, and uh, have a 300-pound man jump on my chest and live to talk to you about it today. So, I became really as close to what I prayed for as I possibly could. So anyway, that was my beginnings of wanting to be stronger and do good things. And athletics were, my parents were divorced when I was 13. We moved to Florida when I was 11, and I didn't even know my parents were going to get a divorce, and didn't see my dad around for quite a while. I've got 4 younger siblings, and so I just applied myself to. I've had a job. I got a paper route when I was 12. I sold sodas in the Tampa Stadium and watched Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff and Freddie Solomon, who was a tremendous football player, both of them at the University of Tampa with number 40, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, who was a fullback. I welded mailbox posts. I worked at Kmart. and I made good grades in school, and I just stayed in the athletic field. I just, whether it was middle school or it was called junior high back then, I've played sports all my life. I was either wrestling, track, baseball, or football, and still to this day have the most letters at the high school I attended, because they didn't put restrictions on that. If you could do it, you could do it. And fortunately, I did it because I just really didn't want to go home. I wanted to better my life, and making good grades in school and being an athlete actually propelled me to a life that, honestly, I humbly say this, that most men could only dream of. I've been to over 50 countries. I've wrestled in every state in America, all the major cities in America. I've had over 5,000 wrestling matches, and lived at times like a rock star. And it's just amazing. In the world of professional wrestling, I fell in love with that when I came to Florida and I saw championship wrestling from Florida. Jack Briscoe, Gordon Soley, Eddie Graham. These guys were just amazing, and they captivated me. It was the first time I had really ever seen professional wrestling. So I just wanted then to be a professional wrestler, even when I excelled in football, got a football scholarship, and love football, but always wanted to be a pro wrestler. And so, God's been very good to me.
Let's talk about the Killer Bees tag team. You were one half of that iconic duo. How did that come about?
Well, I had worked for Vince Sr. And Vince Jr. I had been there twice before. The Florida Championship Wrestling tape actually went up into the New York area. So I went into, it was a territory then as well. And it was, I was just a mid-card guy, and they just really liked me. The McMahons liked me a lot. And Vince McMahon Sr. actually gave me the B, said, you need to be B Brian Blair, not just Brian Blair. He said, I can open up the phone book here. I see lots of Brian Blairs, but there's no B Brian Blair. He said, I don't see any B Brian Blairs. I want you to be B Brian Blair. Is that all right? And I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Whatever you want. So, because people call me B anyway. And, or Beeper or Beeper, but B was the most
Whatever
common
nickname they were giving you at the time.
Then after that, it was Triple B. But anyway, so they wanted me to come back after I left to come to Florida to win the Florida heavyweight title. They wanted me to come back after my Florida run to compete for the not the world title, their intercontinental championship. And so I get a phone call. We get Florida popping again. Eddie Graham had shot himself. It was terrible, 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 terrible on Super Bowl Sunday. And I still feel bad to this day about it, but I got a phone call from Hulkster, and he said, who's one of my best friends, and he says, Vince wants to create this tag team division. He knows you were going to come up back as a singles guy, but he I talked to him, and I think you and Jim Brunzell would be perfect for this new tag team division. And he said, this is not going to be an ordinary tag team division. I mean, this is going to be like you guys are going to main event towns, and they plan on running 2 to 3 towns a night. And gave me this long story. And so I didn't know Jim Brunzell, but I heard of him, and Terry assured me he was a nice guy, good guy, easy to work with, great worker, blah, 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 a lot of tag team experience with his partner, Greg Gagne, the High Flyers. And I knew who he was through the wrestling magazine, Stanley. And so we got together in Brantford, Ontario, Canada. And George Scott, who was a booker then, said, hey guys, Vince wants you to come up with a catchy tag team name. And, you're on in about an hour and 10 minutes, whatever it was. Several people are around. George is talking to us, Lanny Poffo is sitting right next to us, and just a whole crew of characters. Uh, so George leaves, and I'm thinking about the undefeated Miami Dolphins, because Blair Brunzell, the bees, and I said, Jimmy, how about the bees or the killer bees or some killer bees? Yeah, Jimmy said, yeah, the killer bees. I like that. I like it. And so George Scott, I don't know. He hadn't even left to go talk to Vince or wherever he was going, and we got George over and said, George, how about the killer bees? He goes, wow, I really like that, but it's up to Vince. I'm going to go talk to Vince. When he comes back, he said, you guys are officially the killer bees. And Lanny Poffo reaches in he's got this big hockey bag full of gear. I mean, all kinds of gear. Lanny had more gimmicks than Carter has Liverpool. And so he pulls out these black and yellow tights, and they're actually like the very ones, we had made. He just happened to have 2 pairs of them. So we went out as the killer bees, and it clicked. And then when we got, Billy Red Lions from Canada gave us this idea about that's generally used for the heels, bad guys, and switching. He said him and his brother used to wear masks, and they'd switch, and the people would really get pissed off. But he says, if you guys, if the heels get enough heat, you guys as baby faces, you put those masks on and switch, I think you'd really get over. So Jimmy and I talked about it, and yeah, that's a great idea. One of the worst mistakes Vince McMahon Jr. ever made was, not putting the titles on us that he promised us 3 times, but B was he could have made a fortune marketing those masks. I mean, because he was big into the multi-profit centers, into the action figures,
Market those things for the
Oh,
kids
the
and
killer
the
bee mask
collectors.
would have
Yeah,
been so hot. I mean,
would
he
made a
could,
lot of money.
yeah, bought them for $2 and sold them for $20 or whatever, buy as many as he would buy. And so that's how we became the Killer Bees. And we had a great run. We were in WrestleMania 2, 3, 4. We were the first big event in Canada, 70-something thousand people. First Royal Rumble, won the first Survivor Series, won the Jack Tunney tournament, and we were all set up for the belts. And George Scott kept telling us, well, the money's in the chase. The money's in the chase. Keep chasing them. And so I understood that maybe 6-8 months into the deal. I said, okay, I'll be a little more patient. And he promised again, and we could see him bringing in more. So they brought in Strike Force. They put Tito Santana and Rick Martel together, Rick Martel and I can't think of his name right now. Good guy, but Strike Force. They had so many teams, and we started to get lost in the shuffle. So I went to Vince in Salisbury, Maryland, and this was right before WrestleMania 5, a little bit before WrestleMania 5, and I said, Vince, I said, I have to give my notice. And he said, what? I said, yeah, I have to give my notice. He said, why don't you stay? I'll split you guys up. We're thinking about turning you guys heel. And I know you were thinking about turning us heel, but you should have done that after when we won the Survivor Series, and with Powers and Roma, the young stallions, and it would have been a perfect time to turn heel. And they didn't. So anyway, I found out later that Jimmy had sued Vince and won before we got together, that Jimmy had gotten fired by George Scott in the Carolinas, and George and Jimmy never got along at all. And it wasn't really Jimmy's fault. It's just he had some things he had to do and did them because he's a great partner. But he sometimes in any business, you got to roll with the punches and listen. You can't you can't speak up a lot of times when you want to speak up, if you want to, keep your job and keep moving up.
Right.
He was the kind of guy that would say whatever was on his mind, it would come out. And sometimes I cringe, like when Vince first brought us the Killer Bees t-shirts. Now we're starting our merchandising deal. We got action figures, did Toyota commercials, did doll commercials, and the LGN commercials, and it shows us these t-shirts. And I looked at it and I said, wow, I didn't know what it was really, because it was very abstract, and she goes, I don't get it, or I don't understand it. What is it? It was like a negative comeback where Vince was when somebody's excited, you got to show enthusiasm back. Even if it's your boss, you got to be enthusiastic too. It's okay to come back and say, well, and ask after you, wow, that looks so cool, but I'm trying to really grasp this a little. This is something that's so cool. You got to look at it. You got to understand it. But things like that, just kind of drove the spike in, and I hope that they give us the the due that we have coming by putting us in the Hall of Fame, because we were the hottest tag team on the planet for
Yeah, you were a
at
staple
least
of the
6 months.
division.
Yes, at least 6 months. We were the hottest babyface tag team there was anywhere in the world, and it's it would be nice to be recognized, and we're both Jimmy and I are in the Iowa Hall of Fame, which is nice. The Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in Iowa, and you have to have had amateur background to get in there, and so that's good. But everybody understands the WWE brand, and that's who we wrestled for. We certainly hope that that they recognize that. I know that I have a good relationship with the WWE because I run the largest charity in the world for pro wrestling, the Cauliflower Alley Club, which was established in 1965. I've been the president and CEO for the past 10 years. And in that time, we have, doubled our membership, over doubled the amount of money that we take in, and over doubled the amount of money that we give out. So it's been a tremendous opportunity to do this. I have some great people. We all work, we're all volunteers, because the way I look at it, Stanley, is that, going back to the territories, which was the basis for all of wrestling. I might not have wrestled in, let's say, Portland, but the guys that were there, from Roddy Piper, Roddy Piper, the Cuban Assassin, so Lynn Denton, so many different guys there, made that territory so that everybody else could go to that territory and make a living. They worked hard, and so we're all connected in this family way. And the Cauliflower Alley Club is the only place where a lot of guys didn't plan correctly. They never, when you started wrestling, you just listened to the people that you hung around with. There was no financial advice. A lot of guys failed to get insurance, failed to plan correctly, got disease, got divorces, and had no life insurance, or we have to pay state taxes in various states that have a state tax. Fortunately, Florida does not have a state tax. And but various states I've worked in, I've had to pay my taxes. But some of the guys didn't, and all of a sudden they find themselves, these taxes have penalties and interest, and all of a sudden they've got to pay, 5, 8, 10 grand, or their house is getting ready to get taken away. And so, for various reasons, we give these people that have been part of the wrestling industry a hand up, and it's just a wonderful feeling.
It definitely is a wonderful feeling. Great idea to have a company that supports these people that are risking their lives, putting their bodies on the line for our entertainment. And so the ability to have an organization to help pay for those things, that's essential. How did the Cauliflower Alley Club come to be?
Well, it was actually started in 1965 by Iron Mike Mazurki, who was not only a wrestler, but he was an actor. He was like the bad guy in a lot of John Wayne films, and he's got a lot of tremendous credits. I'm going to show you, I'm going to pull up a
Okay.
X-ray just to show you some of the things that we go through, but I don't know if you could see my
Yeah.
hand. You see the scars on my hand right there?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all from wrestling, and I'm
Wow.
I'm scarred everywhere. But I just had my fourth back surgery, and
Gosh.
it's a grueling tough business.
It
And
is.
wow, it's amazing sometime how people say, oh, that fake wrestling, whatever, they don't understand. I mean, I played major college football. I've done a lot of hard things in my life, but nothing as hard on my body as pro wrestling. This is what my spine looks like right now. Let me see if we can see that. Wait, wait, let's see.
Oh man.
Uh,
Wow. Oh my. Oh man.
that's all a cage. I had to get the curvature put back in my spine, and those are uh, long screws right there. Uh,
Mm.
it's going into my vertebrae. So yeah,
Crazy.
crazy stuff. But you know, we took a licking and kept on ticking. Things go on, and a lot of people have it much worse. And if I could, if somebody said, would you, you know, not be a wrestler and not be banged up if you had a chance to go back and do something else? And I would say absolutely not. Uh, it was my destiny. It was something that I basically prayed for when I was a kid, and uh, became very successful in a place where a lot of people, just dream about being on the stage, on the card.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful, and to be so close to the talent in the industry still, and to be able to do the Cauliflower Alley Club, which if anybody wants to become a member, it's only $35 to become a member. You go to caulifloweralleyclub.org. We have a tremendous reunion each year, and we have let me reach over here real quick. I'll show you. This was from the last reunion. Some of the
Mm-hmm.
people that were there: Ron Simmons, the Nasty Boys, Mickey James,
CM Punk.
CM Punk, of course. Let's see, where's Coco? Coco Beware,
Mm-hmm.
Damien. There was a lot of other people. We had Jody Malenko, who
Mm-hmm.
Dean Malenko's brother. Jody was big time in Japan. Rhea Von Slasher, who's a Canadian female and just a tremendous girl that really, she actually won our first Independent Wrestlers Award, and she's just an unsung hero. And Koji Miyamoto is a tremendous. He listed every match that I ever had in Japan, what the outcome was, and I spent a lot of my 2.5 years of my life, over 2 years of my life, in Japan, and what an experience to do that. Al Burke, Killer Carl Cox posthumously. Um, it's amazing. I love Japan, and it's Koji was just a tremendous writer and communicator. And without all these people in the business, from your Gordon Soley and Jim Rosses, and all the people that have contributed with their voice, the referees, even the timekeepers. I mean, we appreciate everybody, because it took everybody to make the show and to make the people happy.
It's a crew and a cast all coming together, and it's a production, but it's a live production. There's no other feeling in the world, no other form of entertainment like this in the world, where you're on 365 and everybody, all hands on deck. And you being a part of this organization, it's incredible. How long have you been involved with the Cauliflower Alley Club?
This will be 10 years. We are coming up on our should be 58th reunion. This will be our 57th CAC reunion, and to be established since 1965 is one thing, but to be president for almost 10 years, I don't know where the time went, but it's a very rewarding. It's difficult sometimes. You hear some very, very tough stories, some things that just break your heart. From Brickhouse Brown, I get a call from Jerry the King Lawler, and he says, Brian, Brickhouse Brown. And I said, I heard of him. Yeah, I just never worked with him. Well, he's got cancer. And Rocky Johnson calls me, hey, Brickhouse Brown, he's got cancer. I said, I told Jerry to have him call me. Do you have his number? So Rocky gets me his number, and I call him, and I find out that he's not even going to the doctor. The last doctor that he went to, he had stage 2 prostate cancer, and he's just living in one of those $125 a week room.
Oof.
And eating pain pills. So we got him chemotherapy, first a doctor, obviously, and by this time now he's got stage 4 prostate cancer.
Oh, no, man.
But he was able to live for another year, and he always wanted to come to a Cauliflower Alley Club reunion, which, Stanley, if you ever get a chance, if you like wrestling, the Cauliflower Alley Club reunions are one of the greatest events. It's addicting. You go there once and you just don't ever want to miss, because it's so much fun. Our members are like family, and we'll have 500, 750 people or whatever at our banquets, and you get to meet these tremendous stars and listen to their speeches and watch them receive an award. It's only $150 for a reunion ticket.
I definitely will check that out. Before we go, Brian, I just want to say thank you for coming on the podcast. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers watching this on YouTube. You had just plugged the Cauliflower Alley Club. Where can people find more about you on social media if they want to get in touch with you about anything?
On Twitter or X, Killer B1B, on Facebook, B Brian Blair. I've got the Killer Bees page, the B Brian Blair page, and the Brian Blair page. It'll have a picture of Nick Bockwinkel, myself, and Carl Lauer, who was the president, or he was actually the executive vice president when I came on board, and taught me a lot. Great guy. Just great people. Every legend, the Funks, the Briscoe, everybody that grew up in the wrestling industry, even from Vince McMahon to Triple H, everybody has been to the Cauliflower Alley Club. WWE is one of our biggest supporters, and we appreciate them so much. We got to get AEW aboard now. I know Tony Khan would love to be a part of the Cauliflower Alley Club. So that's one of my missions now, is to get Tony involved. And, everybody realizes that we're just a charity, should be no animosity. And, the NWA, everybody should be a part of it. There's 7 wrestling shows on television now. And
it's nuts. Can you believe that? I mean, who would have thunk it? Like 20 years ago, you'd only see maybe but 1 or 2. Now it's like everywhere.
Exactly, Stanley. And, it's a great time, great happening, great cause. And just like your podcast, lifting up people is a wonderful thing, and a wonderful mission statement. And you've been a tremendous host. So I urge people to tell others about Stanley Carr and your wonderful podcast. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on, Stanley.
Oh, it means a lot to me. And I thank you again. And you're more than welcome to come back.
Thank you, Stanley. Thank you. Call me. I'd love to come back sometime.
Yeah, and you can share the video with everyone. We'll make this thing go viral. We'll have more stories to tell.
Yeah, don't forget to get Truth Be Told. Yeah, if you read this, I promise. And I'll tell you what, any of your listeners, if you read this book and don't like it, I will give you double your money back. And that's a promise. I will give you double your money back. I'll ask you a few questions to make sure you read it so you don't scam me, but tell me you don't like it and I'll give you double your money back.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you, Stanley. God bless, brother.
All right.
Keep
Take care. I will.
Okay.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.